Hello everyone, you're now with me, Ruben Gomez, for TVS News at 5. May the Festival of Lights illuminate your life with peace, prosperity, good health and happiness. Deepavali greetings by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong Al-Sultan Abdullah, Rayatuddin Al-Mustafa Billah Shah and Raja Pemaisuri Agong Tunku Hajah Azizah Aminah Maimunah Iskandaria today to Hindus in the country. Their Majesties conveyed their wish through a posting on the Istana Negara Facebook account. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin hopes that Hindus in the country will celebrate Deepavali joyously tomorrow by complying with the stipulated standard operating procedures as the country is still struggling with the COVID-19 pandemic. He also advised Hindus to celebrate the Festival of Lights by not shaking hands or gathering in large groups and to practice social distancing. In his address that was posted on Facebook, the Prime Minister, in wishing all Hindus a very happy Deepavali, invited all Malaysians to respect and appreciate the diversity that exists in the country by sharing in the joy of the celebration. The Prime Minister urged Malaysians of all races to work together to tackle the tough challenges the country is facing. Sarawak government has submitted an expression of interest to Bank Negara Malaysia for a digital banking license to start such a facility in the state. As such, the state government is collaborating with reputable technology companies and local retail banks approved by the governing bodies to set up a digital banking system, which is resilient, fair and dynamic.
Sarawak government is in the midst of putting up the necessary telecommunication infrastructure and facilities throughout Sarawak, in part to support our digital banking and other digital initiatives.
Chief Minister Dato' Pandikiabang Johari Tun Openg said this during the winding up debate at the Sarawak Legislative Assembly sitting, which had just concluded on Saturday. He said the State Cabinet would be preparing the groundwork towards this new banking infrastructure, which would be required by the younger and new generation of Sarawakians to reap the benefits from the huge financial impacts of the digital economy.
Like it or not, we are at a time where anyone can produce anything, anywhere, through 3D printing, where anyone can broadcast their talent globally via YouTube or buy products from China, whatever they want, via Alibaba.com or other platforms.
Abang Johari, who is also the State Finance and Economic Planning Minister, said the present economy worked across powerful networks that had changed the landscape of doing business, as well as the people's consumption, employment and communications medium. He said sales had been increasingly taking place online or over digital platforms rather than through physical shops.
The associations of Southeast Asian nations, ASEAN and New Zealand, need to chart a course towards early economic recovery in effort to mitigate the economic impact posed by COVID-19. The initiative is important as countries around the globe continue to battle the pandemic after nearly a year. In his intervention speech during the ASEAN-New Zealand Commemorative Summit today, Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin said the move can be executed by harnessing potential opportunities, guarding against protectionism, boosting resilience and maintaining open markets. He also called on ASEAN state members and New Zealand to intensify cooperation on pressing issues that have had impacts on the lives of the people, such as environment and climate change. Given stronger political will and determination, Muhyiddin is confident that this can ensure meaningful changes in the way of life towards addressing global climate change. On the same development, ASEAN and New Zealand continue to deepen partnership in facing the post-pandemic era, including in areas related to security and terrorism. Muhyiddin said a more comprehensive collaboration and coordinated approach is needed to deal with existing and newly emerging security threats. He said particularly non-traditional security issues such as migration, cybersecurity, as well as terrorism and violent extremism, This, he said in his intervention at the ASEAN-New Zealand Commemorative Summit held Saturday. The summit, which has held as part of the 37th ASEAN Summit, was hosted by Vietnam via video conference due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. ASEAN-New Zealand dialogue relations have progressed by leaps and bounds over the past 45 years. This is reflected through the strengthening of cooperation framework between ASEAN and New Zealand in the key areas of political security, economy and socio-culture, with the full implementation of the ASEAN-New Zealand Plan of Action from 2016 to 2020. During the summit, Muhyiddin also commended Ardern's leadership and New Zealand's government for its swift action in handling and restoring peace and security following the terror attack in Christchurch in March 2019. Welcome back. ASEAN and the US need to enhance cooperation in the field of research and development of vaccines and antiviral medications, as the call for vaccines and treatment is now louder than ever. Unfair competitions and the monopoly of these vital goods must be avoided at all costs. Foreign Minister Dato Sri Hishammuddin Tun Hussein, in his intervention at the 8th US-ASEAN Summit Saturday, said that vaccine development is essential to ensure that our economic gains do not come at the cost of public health. The Foreign Minister reiterated Malaysia's position, emphasizing that vaccines must be safe to use, affordable, accessible and equitable. On the issue of the South China Sea, Hishammuddin underlined the importance of common sense, rationality, cool heads, and for peace, security and stability to prevail in the maritime zones at this moment. He added Malaysia firmly stands by its position that the issue must be resolved peacefully and constructively. This is accordance with the universally recognized principles of international law, including the United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS 1982. On the situation in the Korean Peninsula, he said Malaysia remained consistent on three matters: the denuclearizations of the Korean Peninsula, adherence to the relevant United Nations Security Council resolutions, and resumptions of dialogue between the relevant parties. The Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs has outlined 7 initiatives to reduce the people's cost of living, specifically in rural and isolated areas. Its Minister, Dato Sri Alexander Nantalinggi, said the initiative could rebuild the domestic economy at all levels, benefiting 32 million consumers in the country.
According to him, of the 708.8 million ringgit development allocation received, 400 million ringgit will be channeled towards implementation of cooking oil price stabilization programs. 200 million ringgit will be allocated to the distribution of necessary goods, liquefied petroleum gas and community drumming. 40 million ringgit will also be allocated towards wheat flour subsidy and price standardization programs in Sabah, Sarawak and Labuan. Meanwhile, 20 million ringgit will be injected into the Buy Malaysian Products campaign to ensure its consistency in boosting economic competitiveness post-COVID-19. About 5 million ringgit and 3.8 million ringgit will be channeled towards micro and affordable franchise development programs, as well as developing franchises.
Since the start of the Movement Control Order in March, implemented to curb the COVID-19 pandemic, over 32,000 small and medium enterprises (SMEs) have unfortunately went out of business.
The Ministry of Entrepreneurship, Development and Cooperatives, quoting statistics by the Companies Commission of Malaysia, said 9,675 SMEs shut down operations in the first phase of the MCO from March 18 to June 9. Over 22,700 SMEs followed suit during the Recovery Movement Control Order from June until September. August recorded the highest figure of holdings, with 17,800 SMEs shutting down during that month. The ministry gave these statistics in a parliamentary written in response to Hulu Selangor MP Jun Liao, who asked about the number of SMEs that have folded since the start of the MCO. Meanwhile, the ministry said its survey found that micro-entrepreneurs were affected the most by the COVID-19 economic slump, as many of them have not yet received government assistance. To address the problem, the ministry has proposed the government to increase the current special COVID-19 financial relief to entrepreneurs. It has also proposed expanding product development training and diversifying promotional programs and marketing hubs to increase product demand and market access. However, Minister of Entrepreneurship Development and Cooperatives, Datuk Sri Dr. Wan Junaidi Tuanku Jaafar, said since April till July of 2020, over 82,500 new businesses have been registered. According to him, this shows that the COVID-19 pandemic has not hampered anyone to venture into business. He noted that they should adapt with the current approach and use e-commerce platforms as the medium to market their products or services and urged entrepreneurs to stay positive in facing the pandemic. He added that entrepreneurs would need to equip themselves and their businesses with the knowledge provided freely by government agencies in order to find new ways to operate their businesses.
And now the global news. Typhoon Vamco continued to wreak havoc across the Philippines with strong winds and torrential rains leading to 26 dead and 14 missing in the country. The storm, which brought powerful winds and torrential rains to the capital city of Manila and nearby provinces, damaged tens of thousands of houses. Dozens of rescuers scrambled to evacuate trapped residents living in suburb of Manila after Typhoon Vamco triggered flood inundated the Philippine capital and several provinces in the main island of Luzon. The typhoon triggered flood submerged farmlands, roads and tens of thousands of houses, forcing residents to climb onto rooftops to await rescue. Over 3 million households in and around Manila were left without power following the typhoon, as people waded through waist-high floods carrying valuables and pets. Nearly 200,000 people were evacuated before Vamco arrived late on Wednesday. Many residents in Manila were stranded inside the houses as the flood in streets kept rising. Local government immediately dispatched rescue boats to assist trapped residents to evacuate. Well, that's all for me. TVS News at 5. Remember, tonight, 11:30 p.m. with Shira Abang Manso and Razi Ahmad. Ruben Gomez, happy Deepavali. Anytime, anywhere.